My son banned me from Christmas dinner after I paid $237,468 for his lavish home. Shocked and betrayed, I uncovered their cruel scheme. You won't believe how I turned the tables to reclaim justice. Watch now for a jaw-dropping fight for truth. I pulled into my driveway, the truck's engine rumbling to a stop as the cold December air seeped through the cracked window. South Hills stretched out around me, its quiet streets lined with memories of a life I used to know. A life where family meant everything, where every sacrifice felt worth it just to see my son, Ethan, smile. That man, the one who believed in those things, feels like a stranger now, a fool. I stepped inside, the house creaking under my weight. The porch light flickered, a repair I'd put off for years because every spare dollar went to Ethan and his wife, Sophia. I hung my coat on the rack, the same one Ellen picked out at a yard sale 30 years ago, and shuffled to the kitchen. The air smelled faintly of coffee and dust, a far cry from the vanilla-scented glow of Ethan's house, the one I'd poured my life savings into. I sank into a chair at the chipped formica table, the wood groaning like it shared my exhaustion. My knees ached from years of laying tile, from carrying the weight of a family that no longer wanted me. The sting of Ethan's words still burned. "You're not welcome at Christmas, Dad." Not welcome, after everything I'd given them. The words echoed as I opened the drawer by the sink, pulling out a manila folder stuffed with bank statements, receipts, and mortgage papers. The paper trail of my stupidity. I set it on the table. The weight of it was heavier than the 62 years I had carried on my shoulders. I grabbed my old calculator, the one Ellen used to balance our checkbook, and started adding up the cost of my love. 5 years, 60 months of automatic transfers, $2,800 every 15th of the month, straight from my account to theirs. I punched the numbers in, watching them climb. First year, $33,600. Second year, another $33,600. By the third year, I'd stopped buying new clothes, wearing the same flannel shirts until the elbows wore thin. By the fourth, I was shopping at discount grocery stores, swapping steak for canned soup. This year, the fifth, I'd been eating peanut butter sandwiches for lunch, scraping by to make ends meet. Total, $168,000 in mortgage payments alone. But that wasn't the half of it. There was the down payment on their house, a sprawling Craftsman in Kendall Yards, $47,000 I'd pulled from a home equity loan against this very house. I remembered the day I signed the papers at the bank on Lincoln Street, the loan officer's pitying look burning into me. "Mr. Harper, are you sure about this? It's a big risk for someone else's investment." Someone else's investment, not my son's future, not my family's security, just a transaction to them. I'd brushed it off, thinking I was building a legacy for Ethan, for the grandchildren I'd hoped to spoil someday. Then there was the kitchen renovation, $18,000 for granite countertops and a professional-grade KitchenAid mixer, which Sophia insisted she needed for her baking phase. She used it twice before abandoning it, the cherry red machine gathering dust while I skipped car repairs to cover their property taxes. And the furniture, $12,000 for silk curtains, a leather sofa, a dining table that Sophia said was essential for their image. Image. That word stuck in my craw now, bitter as the cheap coffee I drank to save a buck. I leaned back, staring at the folder. $237,168. That's what my calculator spat out when I added it all up. Mortgage payments, down payment, renovations, utilities I'd covered when Ethan lost his job 2 years ago. "Just temporary, Dad," he'd said, standing in my kitchen with Sophia behind him, her $700 purse slung over her shoulder, nodding like she felt my pain. That purse could have fixed my roof. It could have bought Ellen the new oven she'd wanted before she got sick. But I gave it to them, every cent, because I believed in family, because I thought Ethan would see me the way I saw my father, a man who'd do anything for his kids. The house felt hollow without Ellen's laughter, without the clatter of her cooking Sunday dinners for us and Ethan when he was a boy. I glanced at her photo on the mantel, her smile frozen in time, her dark eyes kind but fierce. "Ellen," I whispered, my voice cracking in the quiet. What did I do wrong? I gave them everything, and they shut me out. The photo didn't answer, but her face reminded me of the life we'd built together. A modest life, but honest. We'd saved for retirement for a little cabin by Lake Coeur d'Alene, a dream we never got to live because her cancer came too fast, and then my money went to Ethan's dream instead. I flipped through the bank statements, each one a punch to the gut. There was the $5,000 I'd sent for Ethan's car repair when his BMW broke down. Never mind that my truck's tires were bald. The $3,200 for their landscaping. Sophia wanted a proper garden for her book club brunches. The $1,500 for their water bill when they forgot to pay it during one of Sophia's shopping sprees. Every number was a piece of me, a piece of Ellen, poured into a house where I wasn't welcome for Christmas dinner. I thought back to the day Ethan got married 7 years ago. Ellen was already gone, but I wanted to give him the wedding he deserved. $25,000 for a lavish reception at the Davenport Hotel, with chandeliers sparkling and Sophia in a designer gown that cost more than my truck. I'd stood at the back, toasting their future, my heart full despite the ache of Ellen's absence. Sophia had hugged me that night, her perfume sharp and expensive, saying, "You're the best, John. Best." That word felt like a knife now, twisting deeper with every memory. The betrayal wasn't just Ethan's words tonight. It was years of taking, years of Sophia's fake smiles and Richard and Margaret's condescending nods. Richard, with his tailored suits and retired banker swagger, was always talking about his connections at the Spokane Country Club. Margaret, with her pearl necklaces and stories of summers in the Hamptons, looked at me like I was the hired help. And Ethan, my boy, is letting them do it, letting them erase me from their perfect little world. I walked to the living room, the floorboards creaking under my boots. The Christmas lights from the neighbor's house glowed through my window, mocking the darkness inside. I stopped at the mantel, picking up a framed photo from Ethan's high school graduation. He was grinning, his arm around me, my flannel shirt wrinkled from a long day at a job site. Ellen had taken that photo, her laughter in the background, as she teased me about never ironing. That boy, the one who'd hugged me and said, "Thanks for everything, Dad," was gone, replaced by a man who'd let his wife and her parents decide I wasn't good enough for their Christmas table. The hurt was raw, like a wound reopened. But as I stared at the photo, something shifted. The shock of Ethan's words, "You're not welcome," began to harden into something else. Anger, not the fleeting kind, but the deep smoldering kind that comes when you realize you've been played for a fool. They hadn't just excluded me, they'd used me, drained me dry while building their perfect life on my sacrifices. And for what? To be told I didn't fit their traditions? That my tamales and tile-laying stories weren't classy enough for Margaret's delicate sensibilities? I set the photo down, my hands steady for the first time all night. I wasn't just a victim here. I had something they didn't expect. Proof. Every bank statement, every receipt, every canceled check was a weapon, a record of their greed and my generosity. They thought they could erase me, but they'd forgotten one thing. I'd built that house, their life, brick by brick, and I could tear it down just as easily. I thought of Sophia's parents, Richard and Margaret, with their smug superiority. I remembered a conversation last year at their housewarming party, one I'd paid for with a $10,000 check for new hardwood floors. Richard had pulled me aside, his scotch glass in hand, and said, "John, you're a good man, but you've got to understand. Sophia and Ethan are in a different league now. They need to move in circles that, well, match their status." Circles. Like I was some outsider who'd never belong, despite the money I'd funneled into their status. The memory lit a fire in my chest. I wasn't just going to sit here and take it. I'd spent too long being the good guy, the quiet guy, the one who paid and smiled and said nothing. Ellen's voice echoed in my head from years ago when we'd argued about helping Ethan. "Don't let them take you for granted, John," she'd said, her hand on mine. "You're worth more than their demands." I hadn't listened then, but I was listening now. I walked back to the kitchen, the folder still open on the table. My eyes caught on a single document, buried under the bank statements. The original mortgage agreement for Ethan's house. My name was on it, not as a co-signer, but as a guarantor. I'd forgotten that detail, buried under years of automatic payments. If they defaulted, the bank could come after me. My house, my savings, my future, still tied to their greed. But that document was also a lifeline. It gave me leverage, a way to hold them accountable. I grabbed my phone and scrolled to Thomas Reed's number. Thomas, my old lawyer from the days I ran my construction business, had handled contracts for me. He'd know what to do with this. I didn't call yet. It was too late, and I needed to think. But the decision was made. I wasn't going to let them walk all over me anymore. I'd show them what happens when you betray the man who gave you everything. I stood up, the chair scraping against the linoleum. The house was quiet, but it felt different now, like it was waiting for me to act. I looked at Ellen's photo again, her eyes steady and strong. "I'm done being their doormat, Ellen," I whispered. "It's time they learned what I'm made of." I closed the folder, slid it into the drawer, and turned off the kitchen light. Tomorrow, I'll call Thomas. Tomorrow, I'd start fighting back. The morning after Ethan's betrayal dawned cold and gray, the kind of Spokane winter day that seeps into your bones. I sat at my kitchen table, the chipped Formica cool against my palms, nursing a mug of Colombian coffee, my first splurge in years. The steam curled upward, mingling with the faint smell of dust and memory in this house I'd shared with Ellen for 30 years. Last night's words still echoed in my head. "You're not welcome at Christmas, Dad." Not welcome in the house I'd built for them, brick by financial brick, with 237,468 hours of my blood and sweat. The hurt was raw, but the anger I'd felt last night, smoldering as I pored over bank statements, had hardened into something sharper. Resolve. I was done being their doormat, done letting Ethan, Sophia, and her smug parents, Richard and Margaret, treat me like a walking ATM. The manila folder on the table, stuffed with 5 years of financial records, was my proof. Every receipt, every canceled check, every automatic transfer of $2,800 a month for their mortgage. It was all there, a ledger of their greed and my foolishness. But today, that folder wasn't just evidence of my sacrifices. It was a weapon. My phone buzzed at 10:47 a.m., shattering the silence. Sophia's name flashed on the screen like a warning sign. I stared at it, my pulse quickening. Part of me wanted to ignore her, but another part, the part that had spent 8 years swallowing insults for Ethan's sake, wanted to hear what she'd say. I picked up on the 4th ring, letting her wait just long enough to feel the weight of my silence. "John," Sophia's voice dripped with that fake sweetness she'd perfected, the kind she used when asking me to cover their water bill or property taxes. "I heard about the little misunderstanding with Ethan last night. Look, I know this seems harsh, but you have to understand my parents' perspective. They're traditional people. They expect a certain atmosphere for the holidays." I leaned against the kitchen counter, still in my coat from last night's drive. "What kind of atmosphere, Sophia?" My voice was steady, but my grip on the phone tightened. "You mean my tamales and tile-laying stories aren't fancy enough for your parents with their high education and Hampton summers?" Silence. I heard the rustle of shopping bags in the background, probably bought with money that should have gone to their mortgage, the one I'd been paying. "Don't be dramatic, John," she said, her tone sharpening. "This isn't about race, it's about class. My father graduated summa cum laude from the University of Washington. My mother speaks 4 languages. What would you even contribute to our dinner table? Stories about laying tile?" 8 years of biting my tongue, of pretending not to notice her sneers, and now she'd laid it bare. But she wasn't done. "Ellen knew her place better than you do, John," she said, her voice cold. "She blended in. She didn't make waves. She understood some spaces weren't meant for her." My hand clenched the phone so hard my knuckles whitened. "What did you say about my wife?" The words came out low, dangerous. Sophia hesitated, but her arrogance pushed her forward. "I'm just saying she was smart enough to stay quiet. A housekeeper who got lucky marrying you. She knew her limits." "Sophia," I said, my voice cutting through the line like a blade. "Listen carefully. This conversation is over. We're done pretending to be family." I hung up, my heart pounding. The kitchen felt smaller, the air heavier, but something inside me shifted. The hurt was still there, but it was fueling something new. Control. Before I could catch my breath, the phone buzzed again. A voicemail from Sophia. I hit play, expecting an apology, but her voice was sharp, unyielding. "John, I forgot to mention. Ethan reminded me that next week is my mother's birthday. We need $3,000 to host a party at the Davenport. Mother deserves a celebration that matches her status. You'll make the transfer, right? Ethan says you always help family when they need it. Don't let us down." I stood frozen, the phone still in my hand. $3,000. For Margaret's birthday, the woman who just called Ellen a lucky housekeeper. They didn't just ban me from Christmas or insult my wife. They expected me to bankroll a party I wasn't invited to. I pictured Margaret, pearls gleaming, raising a glass of champagne at the Davenport, laughing with her country club friends about her refined life, all paid for with the savings Ellen and I had scraped together over decades. The injustice hit like a freight train. I'd given up peanut butter sandwiches, a new roof, my retirement dreams, just for them to demand more without a shred of gratitude. The rage boiled over, but this time it wasn't aimless. It was focused. I opened my banking app, staring at the pitiful balance left after years of funneling money to them. Enough. I wasn't just going to stop paying their mortgage. I was going to make them pay for what they'd done. I scrolled through my contacts and found Thomas Reed, the lawyer who'd handled contracts for my construction business years ago. My finger hovered over his number, but first I needed to act. I dialed First Interstate Bank, where I'd set up the automatic transfers. "This is Jennifer Miller. How can I assist you?" A professional voice answered. "Jennifer, it's John Harper. I need to cancel an automatic payment. Account number 4832-7421, $2,800 monthly, to Wells Fargo. Account ending in 7423. My voice was calm, but my heart raced. After a few verification questions, she said, "The transfer's been canceled, Mr. Harper, effective immediately. Anything else I can help with?" "No," I said, a weight lifting off my chest. "That's everything." I hung up, the silence in the kitchen suddenly louder. For the first time in 5 years, next month's budget wouldn't bleed me dry. But I wasn't done. Canceling the payment was just the start. I needed to protect myself, my house, my future, everything still tied to their greed through that mortgage agreement I'd found last night. As guarantor, I was on the hook if they defaulted, but that same document gave me leverage. They couldn't sell the house or refinance without my consent. I called Thomas Reed. "John, it's been a while," he said, his voice warm but professional. "What's going on?" I took a breath, steadying myself. "Thomas, I need your help. My son and his wife have been bleeding me dry for years, $237,468 for their house, and now they've cut me out of their lives. I'm the guarantor on their mortgage, and I want to know my options. I'm done letting them use me." Thomas listened as I laid it out. The mortgage payments, the down payment, the renovations, Sophia's insults, their plan to exclude me from Christmas. "That's a lot, John," he said, his tone serious. "You've got a strong case for financial exploitation, especially with your documentation. As guarantor, you have rights. If they try to sell or refinance, you can block it. And if they default, we can protect your assets. Bring your records to my office this afternoon. Let's build a strategy." "Will do," I said, a spark of confidence igniting. "Thanks, Thomas." I hung up, my mind racing. Sophia and her parents thought they'd won, thought I'd roll over like always. They were wrong. I opened the manila folder, sorting through the papers. Bank statements, the mortgage agreement, receipts for the $47,000 down payment, $18,000 kitchen renovation, $25,000 wedding. Every document was a piece of my case, a brick in the wall I was building to take back control. But Sophia wasn't done. At noon, my phone rang again. Ethan, this time. I let it go to voicemail, my hands busy organizing the folder. His message played, "Dad, Sophia's upset about the Christmas thing. She says you overreacted. Look, we need you to pick up her parents from Spokane Airport tomorrow, flight 447 at 2:15 p.m. It's what family does, right? Don't make this harder than it needs to be." I deleted the message, my jaw tight. What family does? The audacity after banning me from their table, after Sophia's insults, to expect me to play chauffeur for Richard and Margaret. I pictured them at the airport, Richard in his tailored coat, Margaret with her designer luggage, waiting for the help they thought I was. The image fueled my resolve. They thought they could keep me in my place, but I was done playing their game. I grabbed a notepad and started jotting down my plan. Meet Thomas, review the mortgage agreement, explore legal options. If they wanted to push me, I'd push back harder. By 1 p.m., I was in my truck, the folder on the passenger seat, heading to Thomas's office downtown. The Spokane skyline loomed ahead, gray against the winter sky, but I felt a clarity I hadn't had in years. I wasn't just fighting for money or a house. I was fighting for my dignity, for Ellen's memory, for the man I'd been before I let them drain me dry. They think I'm weak, I muttered to myself, gripping the steering wheel. But this game's just getting started. At Thomas's office, a sleek space with leather chairs and a view of the Spokane River, we spread the documents across his desk. "This is solid, John," he said, flipping through the mortgage agreement. "As guarantor, you've got leverage, but I found something else." He slid a paper toward me, a lien I'd placed on their house years ago to secure the down payment. I'd forgotten about it, buried under years of giving. "This lien means they can't sell without paying you back $47,000, Thomas said. "It's your ace in the hole." I stared at the document, a slow smile spreading. Sophia, Ethan, Richard, Margaret, they thought they'd outsmarted me, but they didn't know I held this card. They didn't know I was ready to play it. I signed a retainer agreement with Thomas, my hand steady. "Let's do this," I said. "They're about to learn what happens when you betray the wrong man." The morning of December 20th, 2025, arrived with a clarity that cut through the Spokane fog like a blade. I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, adjusting the tie on my navy blue suit, the fabric stiff but familiar, the same one I'd worn to say goodbye to Ellen 8 years ago. Today it felt like another kind of farewell, a goodbye to the man who'd let his family walk all over him for too long. My reflection stared back, eyes sharp with purpose. The hurt from Ethan's betrayal and Sophia's venomous words had hardened into something unbreakable. I wasn't just fighting for money or a house. I was fighting for my dignity, for Ellen's memory, for the truth. The past week had been a whirlwind. After Sophia's insulting phone call and her audacious demand for $3,000 to fund Margaret's birthday party at the Davenport, I'd canceled the $2,800 monthly mortgage payments that had bled me dry for 5 years. Ethan's voicemail threatening to smear my name in the Spokane Review if I didn't reinstate the payments had only fueled my resolve. I'd met with Thomas Reed, my lawyer, in his sleek downtown office, spreading out bank statements, receipts, and the mortgage agreement where I was listed as guarantor. The $47,000 lien I'd placed on their house, a detail I'd forgotten until Thomas found it, was my ace in the hole. It meant Ethan and Sophia couldn't sell or refinance without paying me back. That lien, along with $237,468 in documented payments, was the foundation of our case. Today, we'd lay it all bare. I walked into the Spokane County Courthouse at 9:45 a.m., my briefcase heavy with evidence. The building smelled of old wood and floor polish, its high ceilings echoing with the murmurs of lawyers and clerks. Thomas met me outside the courtroom, his gray suit crisp, his handshake firm. "You ready, John?" he asked, his eyes scanning mine for doubt. "More than ever," I said, my voice steady. Across the hall, I saw Ethan, Sophia, Richard, and Margaret huddled with their lawyer, a slick young man in a pinstripe suit. Sophia's designer coat was immaculate, but her eyes darted nervously. Ethan avoided my gaze, his shoulders hunched. Richard whispered something to Margaret, who clutched her pearl necklace like a lifeline. The courtroom was a study in contrasts. The judge's bench loomed high, carved from dark oak, while the fluorescent lights buzzed faintly overhead. I took my seat at the plaintiff's table, Thomas beside me, as the bailiff called, "All rise." Judge Margaret Ellison, a woman in her late 50s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, took her place. The case, Sophia Harper versus John Harper. Sophia had filed a lawsuit claiming I'd breached a family financial agreement by canceling the mortgage payments, demanding I reinstate them and cover their legal fees. It was a desperate move, a last-ditch effort to keep their lavish lifestyle afloat. But they'd underestimated me. Thomas stood, his voice clear and commanding. "Your Honor, my client, John Harper, has spent 5 years supporting his son, Ethan, and daughter-in-law, Sophia, with $237,468 in financial contributions toward their home in Kendall Yards. This includes $168,000 in mortgage payments, $2,800 monthly for 60 months, a $47,000 down payment from a home equity loan against Mr. Harper's property, $18,000 for a kitchen renovation, $25,000 for their wedding, and $12,000 for furniture and utilities." He placed a thick stack of documents on the bench, bank statements, canceled checks, receipts, and the mortgage agreement. These records prove Mr. Harper's extraordinary generosity. I watched the judge's eyes flick to the documents, her expression unreadable. Across the aisle, Sophia shifted uncomfortably, her manicured nails tapping her purse. Ethan stared at the floor, his face pale. Richard leaned forward, whispering furiously to their lawyer, who looked increasingly uneasy. Thomas continued, his tone sharpening. In return, Mr. Harper was excluded from their Christmas dinner, told he wasn't classy enough for Sophia's parents, Richard and Margaret Collins. They insulted his late wife, Ellen, calling her a lucky housekeeper who knew her place. And when Mr. Harper rightfully canceled the mortgage payments, they threatened to smear his reputation in the Spokane Review. He held up Ethan's voicemail transcript, printed from my phone. "This is their attempt to bully him into compliance, Your Honor, and now they've sued him to force him to continue funding a lifestyle built on his sacrifices." The courtroom was silent, the weight of Thomas's words settling like dust. I stood when he nodded to me, my heart steady despite the eyes on me. "Your Honor," I said, my voice calm but firm, "I gave them everything. My savings, my retirement, my dreams, just so Ethan and Sophia could have the life they wanted. I paid $237,460 for their house, a house I'm not welcome in. They insulted my wife, who worked herself to the bone for our family. And now they're suing me to keep taking. I'm here for justice, nothing more." Judge Ellison's gaze softened for a moment, then turned to Sophia's lawyer. "Mr. Caldwell, your client's response?" Caldwell cleared his throat, adjusting his tie. "Your Honor, Mrs. Harper contends that Mr. Harper entered an implicit family agreement to support their household. His abrupt cancellation of payments has put their home at risk, causing undue financial distress." The judge raised an eyebrow. "An implicit agreement? Do you have a contract, Mr. Caldwell? Emails, texts, any documentation of this so-called agreement?" Caldwell hesitated, flipping through papers. "Well, Your Honor, it was a verbal understanding based on family dynamics." "Family dynamics?" the judge repeated, her voice edged with skepticism. "Mrs. Harper, can you explain this understanding?" Sophia stood, her face flushed, her voice unsteady. "John always helped us. He paid for things without us asking. We assumed he'd continue because he wanted us to succeed. He can't just stop now. It's not fair." "Not fair?" I cut in, unable to hold back. "Fair is me eating peanut butter sandwiches to pay your $2,800 mortgage." Fair is me taking a second mortgage on my house for your $47,000 down payment. Fair is you banning me from Christmas because I'm not classy enough for your parents." The courtroom went still. Sophia's eyes widened, her composure cracking. "Mr. Harper, please," the judge said, but her tone wasn't harsh. She turned back to Sophia. "Mrs. Harper, do you have any evidence of this agreement? Anything to show Mr. Harper was obligated to continue these payments?" Sophia stammered. He always paid before. It was understood." Richard stood, his face red. "This is outrageous, Your Honor. John's a bitter old man who's lost his way. He's trying to ruin his own son's life." The judge banged her gavel. "Sit down, Mr. Collins. You're not a party to this case." Margaret clutched Richard's arm, her pearls glinting as she whispered something, her face pale. Thomas seized the moment. "Your Honor, there's one more piece of evidence." He slid the $47,000 lien document across the bench. When Mr. Harper provided the down payment, he placed a lien on the property to secure his investment. This lien prevents Ethan and Sophia from selling or refinancing without repaying him $47,000. They've ignored this obligation just as they've ignored his sacrifices. The judge's eyes narrowed as she reviewed the lien. "This changes things," she said. "Mrs. Harper, you've provided no evidence of a binding agreement, while Mr. Harper has documented $237,468 in contributions and a legal lien. Your claim appears baseless." Sophia's lawyer tried to interject, but the judge cut him off. "I've heard enough. I'll issue a ruling by December 22nd. The gavel fell, and the courtroom erupted in murmurs. Sophia's face crumpled, her hand shaking as she clutched her purse. Ethan looked like he'd been punched, his eyes darting to me, then away. Richard stood again, his voice loud and desperate. "This isn't over, John. You think you can humiliate us like this? I have connections in this town, people who'll make sure everyone knows what kind of man you are." I met his gaze, unflinching. "Go ahead, Richard. Tell them how I paid for your daughter's house while you called my wife a housekeeper. Tell them how you sued me when I stopped being your bank. I've got the truth on my side." Margaret gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Sophia grabbed Ethan's arm, whispering frantically, but he just stared at the floor, defeated. As we left the courtroom, Thomas clapped a hand on my shoulder. "You did good, John. They didn't see that lien coming. It's your trump card." I nodded, the weight of the briefcase lighter now. The winter air hit my face as we stepped outside, but it felt clean, like a new beginning. Sophia and her family piled into their rental car, still arguing, their voices fading into the December chill. I'd won this round, but I knew they wouldn't go quietly. Richard's threat about his connections lingered, a hint of trouble to come. But for the first time in years, I felt in control. They'd tried to break me, but I'd broken their illusion instead. I drove home, the Spokane skyline fading behind me. My house waited, its cracked driveway and flickering porch light a reminder of what I'd given up. But now, with the lien and the court's favor on my side, I had a chance to take it all back, not just the money, but my life. I poured a glass of whiskey, the good stuff I'd saved for a moment like this, and raised it to Ellen's photo on the mantel. "We did it, Ellen," I said softly. "They thought they could bury me, but they're the ones sinking now." The gavel's echo from December 22nd, 2025, still rang in my ears. Judge Ellison's ruling was clear. Sophia and Ethan had no legal claim to force me to continue paying their $2,800 monthly mortgage. The Spokane County Courthouse, with its dark oak benches and cold winter light, had been the stage for my victory. Not only did the judge dismiss their baseless lawsuit, but she ordered them to pay $10,000 in my legal fees, a small but satisfying acknowledgement of the injustice I'd endured. As I'd left the courtroom, Thomas Reed clapped my shoulder, his grin wide. "You showed them, John. That lien was a game changer." The $47,000 lien I'd placed on their house years ago, uncovered in our planning, had sealed their fate. They couldn't sell or refinance without paying me back, and they couldn't afford to. For the first time in 5 years, I walked out into the December chill feeling lighter than air. Now, 3 months later, on March 15, 2026, I sat at my kitchen table, the Formica surface no longer chipped but polished. A small upgrade I'd afforded with the money I wasn't sending to Ethan anymore. A certified letter arrived that morning, its official seal catching the morning light. I opened it, my coffee mug warm in my hand. Notice of default. Ethan and Sophia Harper, $8,400 USD in arrears, 3 months delinquent on mortgage payments. 14 days to bring the account current or face foreclosure. I set the letter down, sipping my coffee. It was like reading a weather report from a distant city. Interesting, but not my problem anymore. The $500,000 Craftsman home in Kendall Yards, the one I'd poured $237,468 into with mortgage payments, a down payment, renovations, and more, was slipping through their fingers. And I felt nothing but relief. My phone had been buzzing for weeks with calls and texts from Sophia, Richard, and Margaret, all blocked after their first frantic voicemails. Sophia's voice, once dripping with fake sweetness, had turned shrill, demanding, "I fix this," or "think of Ethan." Richard's messages were threats, promising his connections would ruin me. Margaret's words were pleas, cloaked in condescension, as if I owed her pity. I ignored them all, but Ethan's calls kept coming, persistent as the Spokane rain. I'd let them go to voicemail, his voice growing more desperate each time. "Dad, please call me back. We're in trouble. I didn't mean for this to happen." I'd listened, then deleted, my heart torn but resolute. He'd made his choice when he stood by Sophia and her parents, letting them ban me from Christmas and sue me for more. On a Thursday evening, as the spring sun dipped low, painting the sky pink over South Hills, a knock came at my door. I knew it was Ethan before I opened it. He stood on my porch, his once crisp suit wrinkled, dark circles under his eyes, the smell of desperation clinging to him like damp wool. "Dad," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We need to talk." I stepped aside, letting him in. The living room felt different now, with new paint on the walls and a recliner I'd bought with my first mortgage-free paycheck. Ethan's eyes scanned the changes, lingering on the fresh curtains, the repaired lamp, the signs of a life no longer drained by his demands. "Nice place," he said quietly, perched on the edge of my old sofa like he didn't belong. "It's what happens when you stop bankrolling people who don't appreciate you," I replied, settling into my recliner. "Coffee?" He shook his head, his hands twisting together. "Dad, I'm sorry. About Christmas, the lawsuit, and the way Sophia and her parents treated you. I didn't know they were going to sue you. I didn't know what they said about Mom." I leaned forward, my voice steady. "What did they say about your mother, Ethan?" He swallowed hard, his eyes fixed on the floor. "That she knew her place better than you. That she didn't make waves. That she understood boundaries." My jaw tightened, the memory of Sophia's venom, calling Ellen a lucky housekeeper, cutting fresh. "And what did you do, Ethan?" He flinched. "I should have stood up for you. I should have stopped them years ago." His voice broke, and he ran a hand through his hair, the same gesture he'd made as a boy when he was scared. "I let Sophia and her parents take over. I thought I was keeping the peace, but I was wrong." Silence settled between us, heavy but not uncomfortable. Outside, the neighbor's lawnmower hummed, a normal sound in a world that felt anything but. "The house is in foreclosure," Ethan said finally, his voice barely audible. "We can't make the payments without—" He stopped, and the words stuck. "Without my money," I finished, my tone even. "Without the $237,468 I gave you over 5 years. The $47,000 down payment, the $18,000 kitchen, the $25,000 wedding. Without the father, you were treated like a servant." Ethan's face crumpled, tears welling up. "I've lost you, haven't I? I chose them over you. And now, I've lost you." I looked at him, the boy I'd raised, the man who'd let his wife and her parents erase me. "Ethan," I said softly. You didn't lose me. You gave me away. There's a difference. He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, his shoulders shaking. Is there any chance you could forgive me? I forgave you months ago, I said, and I meant it. But forgiveness doesn't mean going back to how things were. It doesn't mean pretending you didn't let them insult me, ban me from Christmas, or sue me for more. If you want a relationship with me, you'll have to build it from scratch, with respect, not demands. He nodded, his eyes red. The house. What do we do? I leaned back, the recliner creaking softly. You're a grown man, Ethan. Figure it out. Get a job that covers your bills. Sell the house and buy something you can afford. Stop living beyond your means and expecting me to pay for it. Ethan stood, his shoulders straighter than when he'd arrived. For what it's worth, Dad, seeing you in court. I was ashamed, but I was proud too. You fought back. I nodded. Good. Maybe there's hope for you yet. He walked to the door, pausing. I'll try, Dad. I'll try to make this right. The door closed behind him, the sound soft but final. I sat there for a long moment, the house quiet around me. The weight of 5 years, $237,468, countless sacrifices, and a broken heart had lifted. I'd won more than a court case. I'd won my life back. The foreclosure notice meant Ethan and Sophia would face the consequences of their greed. They'd likely lose the house, move to a smaller place, maybe a rental in a less glamorous part of Spokane. Richard and Margaret's social standing, built on my money, had crumbled after the courtroom humiliation. Whispers at their country club, I'd heard from Laura, my sister, painted them as opportunists who'd exploited a grieving widower. Their connections hadn't saved them. I walked to the mantel, picking up Ellen's photo. Her dark eyes seemed to smile, steady and strong. We did it, Ellen, I whispered. I'm free. The words felt like a prayer, a release. I'd spent 8 years since her death trying to hold our family together, but I'd learned a hard truth. Family isn't just blood. It's respect, loyalty, and love that don't come with a price tag. Ethan might rebuild that with me someday, but it would be on my terms, not his. The next morning, I drove to the bank, the $10,000 legal fee check in my pocket. I deposited it, watching the teller stamp it with a satisfying thud. My account balance, for the first time in years, wasn't a source of dread. I could fix the roof, buy a new truck, maybe take that trip to Lake Coeur d'Alene that Ellen and I had dreamed of. I stopped at a hardware store on the way home, picking up paint for the spare bedroom. The clerk, a young man with a friendly smile, asked what I was working on. A new start, I said, and meant it. Laura called that afternoon, her voice warm. John, you coming to dinner Sunday? The kids want to show you their science projects. I smiled, picturing her cozy house, the laughter of my nieces and nephews filling the air. Wouldn't miss it, I said. Her home wasn't grand like Ethan's, but it was real, filled with people who wanted me there, not my money. That evening, I sat on my back porch, a glass of good whiskey in hand, the kind I'd saved for special occasions. Spring was coming to Spokane, the trees budding, the air soft with possibility. I was 62, Ellen had been gone 8 years, and I'd wasted 5 of them being a doormat. No more. I raised my glass to the sky, the stars just beginning to peek through. To us, Ellen, I said, to the life we deserved. The future wasn't certain. Ethan might try to rebuild, or he might fade away. But I knew one thing. I was done paying for love I had to beg for. Laura's dinner, the kids' projects, maybe even picking up my old camera to capture Spokane's spring beauty. That was enough. That was family. That was home. The spring of 2026 felt like waking up from a long, heavy dream. At 62, I stood on the back porch of my sister Laura's house, a glass of aged bourbon in my hand, the kind I'd kept tucked away for moments worth celebrating. The Spokane sky was a canvas of soft pinks and purples, the kind of sunset Ellen would have loved to photograph. 8 years since she'd left me, 5 years since I'd let Ethan and Sophia drain my savings, And 3 months since I walked out of the Spokane County Courthouse with my head high, the weight of $237,468 in sacrifices finally lifted. The courtroom victory, dismissing Sophia's lawsuit, securing my $47,000 lien, and winning $10,000 in legal fees, hadn't just saved my finances. It had saved me. Laura's house was alive with noise, the kind of chaos that felt like home. Her kids, my nieces and nephews, darted around the dining room, their voices a jumble of excitement over school projects and spring break plans. The smell of lasagna and garlic bread wafted through the air, mingling with the faint sweetness of blooming daffodils outside. I leaned against the porch railing, the bourbon's warmth spreading through my chest, and let myself breathe. For the first time in years, I wasn't checking my bank balance with dread, wasn't calculating how to stretch my Social Security check to cover Ethan's mortgage. I was free. The past 3 months had been a quiet transformation. After the court ruling on December 22nd, I'd deposited the $10,000 legal fee check, a small but meaningful victory. My house in South Hills, once a crumbling reminder of my sacrifices, now gleamed with fresh paint on the walls, a patched driveway, and a new oak bookshelf I'd built myself, its shelves lined with Ellen's old novels and my rediscovered photography books. I'd traded peanut butter sandwiches for fresh produce, bought a new pair of work boots, and even booked a weekend fishing trip to Lake Coeur d'Alene, the one Ellen and I had always planned but never took. Each small act, painting a wall, buying a steak, planning a trip, felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Ethan and Sophia, meanwhile, had unraveled. The foreclosure notice I'd received on March 15th confirmed what I'd suspected. They couldn't afford the $2,800 monthly mortgage without my help. 3 months delinquent, $8,400 in arrears, they had 14 days to pay or lose their $500,000 Craftsman home in Kendall Yards, the house I'd funded with $168,000 in payments, a $47,000 down payment, $18,000 in renovations, and $25,000 for their wedding. Laura, who heard the gossip through her book club, told me they'd moved into a cramped rental apartment on the north side of Spokane, a far cry from their granite countertop dream home. Richard and Margaret, Sophia's parents, had retreated to their country club circle, but the whispers followed them. Their refined reputation, built on my money, had crumbled after the courtroom exposed their greed. A friend of Laura's overheard Margaret at a charity gala, her voice tight as she deflected questions about the lawsuit. It was a misunderstanding, she'd said, but no one bought it. I hadn't heard from Sophia or her parents since I blocked their numbers, their voicemails growing increasingly desperate before fading to silence. Ethan was different. After our talk on that Thursday evening, when he'd shown up broken and apologetic, he'd sent a few tentative texts. "Dad, can we meet for coffee?" one read. I hadn't responded. Not out of anger. I'd forgiven him, as I'd told him, but because I was done chasing a relationship that demanded my sacrifice without respect. If Ethan wanted to rebuild, it would be on his terms, not mine, and it would take time. I wasn't holding my breath. Inside, Laura called out, "John, dinner's ready. The kids are dying to show you their volcano model." I smiled, tucking the bourbon bottle back in my bag. The dining room was a whirlwind of energy. Laura's husband, Tom, carved the lasagna, while the kids, Emma 10 and Lucas 8, waved me over to their science projects. Emma's volcano, a papier-mâché masterpiece, sat proudly on the table, its red paint lava frozen in mid-eruption. Lucas held up a poster about Mars, pointing to a hand-drawn rover. "Uncle John, look, it's got wheels like your truck." I laughed, the sound surprising me with its lightness. "That's one tough rover, Lucas, better than my old heap." Laura slid a plate of lasagna in front of me, her hand brushing my shoulder. "You doing okay, John?" she asked, her eyes searching mine. "Better than okay," I said, and I meant it. This right here is what I needed." She smiled, her face softening. "Your family, John. Always have been, always will be." Her words landed like a warm blanket, wrapping around the ache Ethan's betrayal had left. This was family, not the kind you pay for, but the kind that shows up because they want you there. After dinner, I helped clear the table, the kids' chatter filling the room. Emma tugged my sleeve. "Uncle John, will you take pictures of my volcano for the science fair? Mom says you used to be good with a camera." I glanced at Laura, who winked. "She's right," Laura said. "You should get that old Nikon out again." I hadn't touched my camera since Ellen died, but the idea sparked something. "Deal," I said to Emma, "but only if you let me photograph Lucas's Mars poster, too." Later, as the kids ran off to play, Laura and I sat on the couch with coffee. "You've changed, John," she said. "Not in a bad way. You seem lighter." I nodded, staring into my mug. I spent too long trying to buy Ethan's love, thinking it would keep us close. But family isn't about money or blood. It's about respect, about showing up for each other. You and the kids, you're my family now. Laura squeezed my hand. "Ellen would be proud of you." I swallowed hard, her words touching a place I'd kept guarded. "I hope so," I said. "I'm trying to live the way she would have wanted, true to myself, not someone else's demands." The next morning, back at my house, I dug through the hall closet, pulling out my old Nikon camera, its leather case worn but familiar. Dust coated the lens, but it felt right in my hands, like an old friend. I spent the afternoon cleaning it, then drove to the Spokane River, where the spring sunlight danced on the water. I snapped a few shots of the rapids, the golden light catching the spray just right. Each click felt like a step back to the man I'd been before grief and betrayal dulled my edges. Ellen had loved my photos, always saying they captured the beauty in ordinary things. "Keep shooting, John," she'd say, her voice soft in my memory. "You see the world in a way no one else does." On Monday, a letter arrived, tucked among bills and junk mail. Ethan's handwriting, shaky but clear, on a plain envelope. I hesitated, then opened it. Inside was a single page, his words careful but raw. "Dad, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. Sophia and I lost the house last week. We're in a rental now, trying to start over. I'm working 2 jobs, and I'm seeing a counselor to figure out why I let things get so bad. I'm sorry for everything. Christmas, the lawsuit, letting Sophia's parents disrespect you and Mom. I don't expect you to write back, but I needed you to know I'm trying to be better. Ethan." I read it twice, my chest tight but not with anger. Ethan was trying, maybe even growing, but his words didn't erase the years of silence, the way he'd stood by while Sophia and her parents tore me down. I folded the letter and placed it in a drawer next to Ellen's photo. "I don't need his apologies, Ellen," I said softly. "I've got my life back." I didn't write back, not because I hated him, but because I was done living for his approval. If he wanted to rebuild, he'd have to show it with actions, not words. That afternoon, I drove to the community center near Monito Park, where Laura had convinced me to join a photography club. The room was filled with folks my age, their cameras ranging from vintage film models to sleek digitals. A woman named Clara, her silver hair pulled back, showed me her shots of the park's rose garden. "You've got a good eye," she said, peering at my river photos. "Join us for the spring exhibit?" I hesitated, then nodded. Why not? The idea of sharing my work, of being part of something again, felt like a gift. As I drove home, the Spokane skyline glowed against the dusk, its familiar spires a quiet comfort. My house welcomed me back, its new paint and sturdy porch light a testament to my independence. I'd spent $237,468 trying to buy a family that didn't want me, but I'd learned the hard way. A real family doesn't come with a price tag. It's the people who sit with you at dinner, who laugh at your bad jokes, who see you for who you are, not what you can give. I poured another bourbon, settling into my recliner with Ellen's photo in view. "We made it, Ellen," I said, my voice steady. "I'm living for me now, just like you always wanted." The lesson was clear, etched into every choice I'd made since the courtroom. Self-respect is the only currency that matters. Nobody can take that away, not even family. And with Laura, the kids, and my camera, I had everything I needed to keep going.